Welcome back to Jumia. So today we'll be covering everything about HTML for beginners from beginning to the end. So let's get started. No time. Okay, so for those of you that didn't get it yesterday, if you want to start, like I told you before, you have to first of all create a folder. So when you create a folder called new, then you go to folders, you put the name of the folder. For me, I'm using GS underscore class because I already have GS underscore class here. If I create a folder to try to replicate it, so let me put 2. For those of you who already created the folder, you don't need to worry about this. So this is the folder here. So your files that you're writing, you need to have it inside this folder so that you don't get lost or you start finding where your file is later. So to add your files, your HTML codes inside this folder now, all you just need to do is go to Sublime. When you go to Sublime, click on files here, click on open folder, click on open folder. When you click on open folder, go to your desktop, click on desktop, then look for the GS file you just created. Like for me now, it's GS class 2, GS class 2. So click on it, then click on select folder. So I can close this first one now and open this second one. So if your first file you want to write now, let's say you want to write HTML file, you just need to write, you first need to Control N to save, to open a new file, then Control S to save. When you want to save, you go to your desktop, click on desktop at the right left here, then scroll down, look for this, the folder we just created, GS class 2. Look for that folder, click on it, open, click on open here, then click on write the name of the file. Now you are inside that folder GS class 2. So all you just need to do is just write the name of the file, index dot html. So when you write the name of the folder, you click on save. Now you can write HTML and click on tab on your keyboard to bring the HTML structure. So let's say give the name of the structure class as class 2, class 2. Class 2. So to continue from where we stopped yesterday, we're going to call one HTML add element. You have HTML element 1, H1, and click on tab. Then you say day 2, day 2. But for those of you who already have this here, one of yesterday, if you don't want to follow the process of creating a new folder, you can still work on that same file you have yesterday. But for those who didn't get it yesterday, we are starting afresh again. So you say day 2, so you click on save. Then you now, when you save it, you now right click to view it in the browser. Right click, click on open in browser. You click on open in browser. You see here day 2 showing on the browser here. So let me zoom this thing so that you see what we are doing. Okay, so it's not there, day 2. So those of you who have yesterday work, you can still, if you still want to try it again, that practice made perfect. If you still want to try it again to create all the process of creating a new folder, adding file, you can still do it so that you practice it and be better. So another HTML element we worked on yesterday was p tag. So all you just need to do is to say opening curly brace, opening tag, you put the p, you put the closing tag, then you write P. That's it. Then you say this is day two. You put your less than and your forward slash to close it. Remember we said yesterday that there must be the opening tag and the closing tag or HTML elements. Nearly all HTML element has both opening tag and closing tag. So you must put the opening tag and the closing tag. So let's save, go to your browser and refresh. It says this is day two. So it's there. You can see it. So that's it. Then another, like what we said yesterday, we have what we called HTML elements are divided into two types. We have the block level elements and the inline level elements. Like we said yesterday, that inline level elements and block level elements are level elements that will always go to the next line, even though you put the two of them in the same line while writing the code, they will go to different lines. So let's say I copy this code now and say this is the two. I could say tomorrow in this next p tag, and I say tomorrow. Tomorrow is day three. Tomorrow is day three, and I save it. Although we have the code in the same line, when I go to my browser and refresh, it will show tomorrow is day three on another line, and today this is today. This is day two on another line. That's because they are block level elements. So for the purpose of this course, we'll give a reference to all block level elements on the description below. So later you can go and check it and see all HTML block level elements and how they work. Another HTML block level element is called div. Div. This is just a container that is used to hold blocks of code. When writing code or when you look at some person's code, you will notice that the word this div element is used often and often. That's because it is a container that is used to hold blocks of HTML code. So for example, I can put P and press tab and write this is my first HTML tutorial. Then I can write another header and say h2 h2 and press tab and says coming soon. Coming soon. So you see all the code just stays in the browser. The div element does not really make any difference to the code. Everything still comes out the same way they will come out even if you write them separately. Then another block level element again that will also be seen when writing code is section. Section. You just write section and press tab to show the opening and closing tag. So like div, sections are also used to hold blocks of code, and just like a container that are used to hold blocks of code, so that when you're writing blocks of code you want them to be organized, you can just put them inside div or section. So let me get rid of this section. So now the next one we'll talk about is inline level elements. Inline level elements are elements that will stay on the same line. They will stay on the same line so long the width of the browser has not been exhausted. They will continue to stay in the same line until they exhaust the whole width of the screen. And example of that inline element is span, SPAN. Just type of span, click on tab, it will show both the closing and opening tab. So you say, let's say, you write a span, say span, this is one, and then you write another span here, and say this is two. If you go to our browser now and refresh, you see that this is one and this is two. Two are staying in the same line. Unlike this is day one and tomorrow is day two that stays in different line. This one they are staying in this. The first one stood in different line. This paragraph they are on this different line, but this span they all stays in the same line until they will exhaust the whole screen. That's when they will go to the next line. So that's how inline level element work. It stays in the same line until they exhaust the screen. So another example of inline level element is bold. B is used to bold text. The B tags are used to make text appear bold. Then let's say make this bold. Then let's have another B tag. B, then make this bold. Please always remember to close your elements. So go to the browser and refresh. It says, although we wrote the B and another line because it's still an inline level element, it stays in the same line with the span that we just wrote. So make this bold, both of them student are staying in the same line. So that's how inline level element works. They will all stay in the same line. You can check the description in the link below. In the description of this video, you will see references to all inline level elements. Please do well and study more on them. Just play around with them, have fun with them. That's how you will learn more on programming. So another thing we'll talk about today now is attributes. We talk on attributes. What are attributes? Attributes are attribute gives more information about an HTML element. An attribute gives more information about an HTML element. For example, let's say we have an HTML element. There's an HTML element called the A tag. So when you click on A, click on tab. When you click on A, click on tab, it will show you the H attribute, the H element, sorry. The H element is used for link. So if you want to make a link to a website or to another website or to any content inside your website, you can use the link attribute, which is this H A attribute to link that document to link your website to another website. For example, let's say you put the text here let's say Google. Your text is Google. So it shows that this link is taking me to Google, for example. Then for you to go to Google, you need to write the link of Google inside this double quote. So let's say you write https www.google.com. So you save it. So whenever you go to the browser and you refresh, you'll see Google here is underlined. That's because it is a link, and all link by default are blue and underlined. So that's how the browser show all link by default. And if you notice, it stays in the same line with all the inline level elements we've been using. That's because the A tag is also an inline level element. So, but if you want to to but what we're talking about is attributes. This href that we now enter the link of the website is called an attribute. So attribute gives more information about the HTML tag. So this tag now is a tag. They call it the a tag. This href is now giving more information about this HTML attribute element. So for example now this href now is not telling the attribute, this href attribute is not telling the a tag where to go. So if you click on the a tag, it will take the information from this href and execute it. That's how attribute work. You have to specify a content. So for HTML attributes, that is how it works. You have the element name, then you have the attributes or the property, and then you have the value. So we have the attributes, and then the value goes inside this single quote or double quote. So for example, if I change here to single quotes, if I change it to single quote and refresh, it will still work. It will still show as link. Nothing changed. It will still work. That's because you can use both single quote and double quote. But for best practice, it is good to use double quote inside your HTML files. Best practice, it is good to use double quote inside your HTML file when writing attributes. So another thing we can do again. So to bring this to separate inline elements, we can use the HTML element called BRO. BRO. You can use it to break the line. Let me put two BRO. When I put two BRO and go to the browser, though this Google is an inline level element, it stays in the same line, but if I refresh, it will go to the next line. So that BRO is a block level element. So you can use it to break the line. It's just like BRO stands for break. So we just use it to break the line so that the next code can go to a new line. That's BRO for you. So more on HTML attribute. So there's another HTML element called image. It is used to display image on the screen. So so write it. You use img. When you click on img, click on tab. It will show you the image. The image has an attribute of source, or SROC for short. This attribute of source is gives information to these image elements. And what information does it give to this image element? It tells the browser where the image is located on your server. So on this your computer now is that the server. So where the image file is inside your computer, that's where that's the location you put inside this your source, so that the browser will know where the image is in your computer. And when the browser know where the image is in your computer, the browser can display the image to any user that wants to see the image. So for example now, what we now do now is to go to our folder. Let's go back to our desktop. Let's go back to our desktop. Then let's go to our GS class 2 folder we created. For those of you who are using GS class folder, you can still continue. It's still the same thing. So all you just need to do is to click on right click, then click on new. Create a new folder inside your GS class folder. So that's a new folder. Name it images. So name yours images. So I've named my images. Then open its images. When you open the images, you see that this says this folder is empty. So we need to find an image. We need to put an image here. So let's go back. Let's look for, go to your gallery, anywhere, any image you have in your laptop. Like me, I have this image for book 2. Okay, so I'll just copy this image here. I'll copy this image here. Then I'll now go back to my desktop. Now go back to my desktop. Then I go to my images folder. That image that I copied, book 2, I'll paste it inside the image folder. Now note that this image folder must be inside your GS folder. Please save it inside your GS folder. So we have image book 2 here. Now if you look at this image book 2 we just copied, look at this place here, the type of the image type. The type of the image is PNG format. So you must take note of the image type. So the name is name book 2. The document type is PNG format. Your own can be any format, no problem. Just make sure you look at the format of the image. Now go back to your source. Then you just need to write the image name that we put there. First of all, we put it inside images folder. So you put images slash, what's the name of the image? Mine is book 2. So you put the name of yours and put the dot. When you want to put the extension, remember I told you the file type, you must remember the file type. If you don't know the file type, you can just click on this place at the left side of your Sublime. You will just see this images folder that we just created. Click on it once. You'll see the name of the file we just brought here, book2.png. You see that the file extension is also there, book2.png. So you just come now and put the name that is of the image, png, and the extension png. So another attribute we can use for this image element is called the width attribute. The width attribute, width. The width attribute is used to specify how wide you want the image to be. For me, let me put my as 100. This 100 is 100 pixel by default. So let me go to the screen and refresh. Voila, we have our image on our screen. Now the image attribute, the image element is an inline level element also, and that is why you see that both Google and the image stays in the same line. That's because image is still an inline level element and they will always stay in the same line. So if I have multiple images, like say I copy this image now and paste it again, it will stay in the same line with the first one also. So that's how inline level element works. So another attribute we can add to this image element, let's add an attribute of height. You can still specify which height you want to give to it. So let me say I want to use 200. For example, now you play around with yours 200. You see the image has changed height. The second image we gave height has another height different from the first one. So you can specify height if you want. For me, I'll just remove this height. Okay, let me just leave the height for reference purpose because some of you will be needing this code. So that's it. Another attribute you can add to the image attribute the the alternate attribute. When writing an image tag, please always remember to write an alternate attribute or ALT. ALT is another attribute you can use for the image type, and it is used to specify the image name or content of the image. Should the browser did not see the image when looking for it on your file. For example, if the browser is looking for the image and could not find the image, the alternate attribute is used to show a demo text that users will see instead of seeing blank page. So let's say I now say the alternate, let me see, write book for sale, my alternate image. If I go to the browser now and refresh, you see that nothing happened. Nothing happened. So let me put some space so that you'll see what's going on. So you see that nothing happens when I put the alternate. However, let's say for example the image, I put the wrong image name and save and go to the browser and refresh now. You see that the image could not be loaded, but that book for sale that I put inside the alternate is now showing as the demo, as an information that I will need to use. Okay, I will know that, oh, this image I was supposed to do this book for sale. So but the browser didn't see the image, that's why I'm not seeing the image. So it's always, for good practice, it is always good to write your alternate attribute inside your image tag. So let's say I have I have the different images here. So the first one, I put the wrong name. I put the correct name with alternate attributes. The second one, I put a wrong name with alternate attribute. The third one, I specify the height. So if you view these things on browser, to show like this. So okay. So for the first one, the alternate attributes did not show because the image is there. The second one, it was the wrong image name, so the alternate attribute is showing book for sale. So that's that for attribute. So any HTML element can be given an attribute. Although most HTML elements have default attributes, any HTML element can be given an attribute, even a p tag. So, for example, let's say a p tag of, let's write p and press tab to give you an a p element. Then let's say you say this is my first style. So you can give it an attribute of, there's an attribute called style attribute. Style. This style attribute is used to give, whenever you are writing CSS inside HTML file, you need the style attribute to be able to change the color, the size, move the text around. In fact, anything you want the text to show or display, you can use this style attribute to give colors and this thing. So let for example, let's say this style now, I'll put color, I put blue, or let me say green, and go to my browser. You see, voila, color. This is my first style. It's on green font. That's because the style attribute is used to style an HTML. So this style attribute can be added to any HTML tags, any HTML element. You can add this style attribute to it. You can use it to manipulate your HTML, increase the font size, reduce the font size. So let's say font size 20 pixel, for example. Now you go to the browser and refresh, it will increase the font size. That's how it will use style attribute. That's how to use style attribute. So the style attribute is used to specify styles for HTML. But we're not into CSS now, because it's when we're writing CSS, we'll need the style attribute to to go into CSS. That's because that's what you use to declare your styling. When we get to CSS, you know that one. So another attribute again that is good for best practice is the title attribute. So for example, I can put title attribute to any HTML element. So let's say I put title. The title is used to specify what that page is all about, so that screen readers, like all those on screen readers and blind people, editor that can read screen, to enable them read the screen, can see what that HTML text is talking about. Screen, basically, the title is used to give additional information about that HTML element, so that screen readers can specify and know what that thing is talking about. So let's say I say this is good. Let's say this is my style. And save it and go to the browser and refresh. If I bring my mouse over to the top, you will see this is my style is showing, is showing when I bring my mouse to the top of the element. That's because it will not show on the HTML element, but when you bring your mouse over it, that's when it will show. That's because it's called the title attribute. It specifies additional information to the HTML element. Now, this title attribute will not work for Android, for mobile phone, especially, sorry, it will not be showing on the screen like the way it showed just now. Like the way it showed just now, it will not show it like that on mobile phone. So it's only on desktop. However, screen readers for both Windows and mobile phone can access it and read it for blind people. So that's for the title attribute. You can add title attribute to anything, even to a tag. Even to this a tag, you can still add title, take me to Google. So you add it and go back to refresh, click on Google, take me to Google. So it still works for any HTML elements. So that's that for attribute. Another attribute, there are a lot of attributes you can work with. There are lots of attributes you can work with. So, but there are what we call the default attributes. Default attribute are attributes that are part of a particular HTML element by default. Like this image now has a default attribute of source. You have to specify it. That's because without specifying it, the image will not work. Default attributes without specifying them, the HTML element might not work. So you must specify default attribute. Like this image now, we specify the source came with it when we click on tab. So you have to specify them. Another, you can play around with HTML attribute. So just know that all a tag have an attribute of href. Then images have an attribute of source. Now, if you notice one thing about this image tag, you notice that there's no closing tag for the image tag. That's because image tag does not have closing tag. Image elements do not have closing tag. In HTML, they call them self-closing tab. They close themselves. So that's how to write it. When you click on the your right img, click on tab. Once you notice that your own will not add closing tag. Don't add closing tag to it because it will not make any difference to the site, and it will not is not necessary because they are self-closing tag. They close themselves automatically. So that's for image. Another HTML element with default source is called the input. You see input has default element of and name type and name. So but now we're not working with input for now because we'll soon come back to input. So that's all for HTML attributes. Now what are comments? We want to talk about comments. Comments are blocks of code that the browser will not execute. So if, for example, you have any piece of code that you don't want the browser to read, you can comment on that code. In HTML, when you want to write a comment, you just, maybe for example, you want to give an information while you write this particular code. So in HTML, all you just need to do is just write your less than. Then you click on this, this symbol, just one. Then you put two minus. Then any code you write here, the browser will not see it. Then if to close it, you put two minus also. Then you put your less than. So when you come to the next line, and write P, it will work. But anything you put inside here, even if you write P tag inside here, If you write p tag inside here, the browser will not read it out because it is comment. But the one you write, so you see our comment above. But the chunks of code we wrote on the comment didn't appear on the browser. That's because comment will not show on the browser. So let's say for example you just want to specify why you put this HTML code here. You can just say put it inside comment and say this is my reason. So you just put the reason why you put the code there inside your comment. So comment basically is used to give information of why or how the code is being executed. So if you want to write why you put a code inside the HTML or how the code you put inside the HTML is working, you can just use comment. So to do the comment, you just need to do the less than, then this sign, this not sign, and two minus, and then write a comment. Then for the closing side of the comment, put two minus and a greater than. For browser, you can, for those of you that are using Sublime, if you want to do comment, you can just click on control and question mark. Control question mark together, it will show the same thing. So you say this is comment. So that's it. Now, another thing we want to talk about now is HTML. So let's talk about another HTML attribute. HTML element called form. So let's say form, an HTML element called form. Whenever you want to post anything to the database, like for example, you want to, when a user comes to the site, you want them to enter their email and password for them to be able to log into your site, or you want them to send you a message. Whenever you want to communicate with the admin of the site, you need form tag. So this form tag is used to post data from the user side to the back end, to the admin or to the database. So form, inside the form you need to put input. I said we'll come back to input. So inside the form you need to put input. So you put input, you click on enter. Input has default attributes, the attribute of type and the attribute of name. So for the attribute of type, we'll put text. Shows that what we want to write inside this input is a text. Then to just the input, you can also use the label, then label, then put first name, then close the label. So when you go to the browser now and refresh, you see our input, first name, and the input. So users can type into this input anything they want. So that's input for you. Our first name is wrong. So remove the name. Okay, so you will notice that both the label and the input stays in the same line. That's because they are inline level elements. So if you want to bring it down. For example, you want to bring it down in your design, you can just spray BRO and bring it down. So refresh. Okay, for our better first name, and let's just copy and paste this one. Let's say the second one is email. Save first name email. Okay, sorry, let's put some BRO in between BRO to break the line. Okay, better. So first name email, and then let's say under HTML input, let's write another input. Let's write another HTML input and say input. This time, instead of using type text, we're going to use type password. Password. So type password. We'll put some BRO. Let's put some label and tab. Then put password. Okay. And add some BRO here to break it. Refresh. Voila. You have a password. Now, if you type inside this email, it will show you text. If you type inside this it will first name, it will show you text. But if you type inside the password, it will show you dots. That's because by default the password type attribute is for reason best known, for security reasons is blocked. So the text will not show. It's just the dot that is there that will show. So it shows that's the password input. So other type of input, there are many type of input type. Like if you want to write input, there are different types you can specify. Input has different type. Let's just play around with them. So another input type you can specify inside the attribute. Remember, these are all attributes. This text is attribute, this one is attribute. So this password is attribute and the value is password. The type is an attribute, the value is password. But now let's change this value to radio and refresh. Put a line break. Let's put a line break. You see, we get this dot. You usually see this thing inside website when you say accept terms and condition. So input type with radio, that's what gives you that round dot that says, let's say we say span here. Let's put a span here and say terms and condition. So let's say terms and condition. So that's it. That's radio. And that inputs another input type we can specify for the attribute is checkbox. So let's say input tab, the type. Let's use checkbox for the type. Checkbox. So if I refresh and go to my browser and change this one to checkbox, change this one to radio. Okay, So we have check box. Check box is like radio, but the difference is that check box is square in shape, while radio is round. So let's say, for example, you have something you want to use that to check, like a list of items you want the user to check. You can just click on check box. So that's how it works. Then inside your if form, you can put button. There's a button, open tab button, then close. Then let's say submit, submit. Button is still an inline level element. So if I go to the browser and refresh, it will stay in the same line with this radio, and it is used to submit form. So when you click on it, it will naturally submit the form. So button is used to submit form. So let me bring it down. So now, so that's how to write form. So with this, you can post the form to the database. But now we're not doing back end, so we cannot post it now. That's because we're not doing back end. So that's progressing. We're progressing so far. So now what we want to work on now is HTML, CSS. HTML, CSS, because gradually all of these things you are doing does not make sense at all. They are just we're just calling the HTML element, nothing, no color, no style, nothing. Everything is just apart from this. This is my first style we did using the style attributes. Nothing, no color. So let's try and do something colorful a little bit. So we're diving into HTML, CSS. So for HTML, CSS, like this button now, we can just put a style attribute. Like if you click on this, let me cancel it. So once you click on style, just put S. If you choose that, it will show style and then ATT arrow. This ATT arrow means style attribute. So if you just click on tab, if you just click on STY, enter to show the style attribute. So the style attribute has the attribute name and then the value. So let's say, for example, the attribute, let's say we want to put color. Let's say the color, we want the color of the button to be white. We just say white. How do I spell white? Okay, that's white. Let's say we want the background to be green, or let's say background color. We want the background color to be blue. We say blue. So we go back to our browser, we refresh. Voila, the button, the background color is now blue. So that's how to use the style attribute. So now we're not going to CSS gradually using the style attribute. So with style attribute, you can write CSS code inside your HTML file. With style attribute, you can write CSS code inside your HTML file. So let's say this. So that's how it works. First of all, what we are not going to CSS fully here, so because when we go to CSS fully, you will understand how to style many things, how to use many values for your style elements. So you can play around with all the HTML elements and their attributes, their default attributes, like this button we just did the style attribute now. This button you can also add another attribute called submit and type, and then put submit. So it shows that this button is a submit button. So this button will basically submit the file to the database. But since we don't have backend here, there is no database to receive the file. So that's that for that. Okay, that's for the form attribute, for the form tag or form element. Another HTML element we can work with is, so let me comment. Okay, let me just leave it so that those who want to make reference to it can make reference to it. So another HTML element we want to work with is, okay, another HTML element we want to work with is the list. Now let's say you have a bunch of things you want to list. For example, let's say the recipe for banga soup, or for jollof rice, African jollof rice. Let's say the recipe for African jollof rice. So let's have a paragraph and say, or sorry, let's have an h2. You can just say, well, do I know how to spell recipe? That recipe for jollof rice. Recipe for jollof rice. So with the list element, you can just list all the item you, all the recipe. So let's say we have the, to write a list element, we have two type of list elements. So we have the ordered list element and the unordered list element. So to write the order list element, you just use OU, sorry, ON, OL. When you write OL, then you put your LI. LI. The LI shows that is a list. So let's say one of the recipe is oil, then another LI. Let's say salt, another LI, water. So you save, you see that it shows recipe for jollof rice 1, 2, 3. That's because we are using ordered, the word ordered list. But if you want to use unordered list we basically put one, two, three, four, just like that. But on ordered list we put something like this. So let's say you change this one now to U UL. UL stands for unordered list. So put it as UL. The same LI, if you refresh, the second one has dot. That's because it is an unordered list. It is not the one that has order. The word order means you have to count from 1 to infinity. So with this ordered list, it will just be listing it 1, 2, 3 like that. But for the unordered list, it will not list it. It will just be using dots to list it. So assignment for you. The unordered list has type type attributes. For unordered list you go and look for it so that you can change. If you want this order not to be just dot, you want to do another stuff, you want it to be good, or you want it to be any design you want, you can specify the type value. So the type with the type attribute you can specify which type of um marker you want to use to identify the unordered list. So let's say for example I say type DISC and refresh. Okay, nothing happened. So let's say I need type circle. Okay, you see that the type has now changed from that disk to circle. If I put it to type DIXC again, you notice that the type is now the circle. You see that the type is circle for the unordered list. But if you refresh now, it's not disk. That's changed to disk. So you can just play with it. Type square. So you have the unordered list type circle. This type circle. This type square. This is square. Okay, see, it's a different. That's how to specify different type. So you can just play with it. You can still put, if you don't want any this to be there, you don't want any type of dot or circle to be there, you can just put none. So by putting none, you go to your browser and refresh, it will still show the list in the list attributes in the list format, but it will not show any pre-leading type. So, and if you notice inline, this list attribute is a block level attribute, so all the list is going to a separate line. That's because they are block level elements. So another thing we'll talk about, that's the last one for HTML. The rest things you play with them, go around, do more on HTML, play with them, use them, you get it right. So I know the last thing we'll talk about on HTML is tables. HTML tables. So how do HTML table work? For you to use HTML table, you just need to specify the table element. So let's say table. Inside the table element, you have the table rows. Table have rows and column. So for the table row, you have to say TR to specify the table row. So inside the table row, we have the table head. One of the table row is the header. The header is the top of the table that display the content, information on it about the content. So let's say table H, which is table head for short. You can say table head, you can say TH, anyone you want. So let's say TH. So let's say number one TH is S/slash N, which means for serial number. Then let's say another table head is name. Another table head is let's put another table head is address. Another table head for phone number. Phone. So if you go down and say T, let's take another, that's all for the table head. Let's take another row and say table row again. Now the first row is for the table head. The second row we want to put information, which is data, inside the table. So we now say another row again and say table data, TD, sorry, not DT, TD. So your table data, we now have for number one table data. Now your numbers of table data must correspond with the numbers of table head. So we have four table head here. So you should also have four table data so that you don't break your table. So the first one says SN, which is serial number, let's say 1. The second table data that corresponds with the name, let's say the name is Samson. Then the third table data is, let's say, the address. Wall Street. Wall Street. Let's see. Number 10. Wall Street. Another table data is, sorry, table data. is from, let's say, plus 1 also plus 2 3 4 0 9 0 6 1 2 3 1 3 2 8. So that's my WhatsApp number. If you want to contact me, you can contact me. So table data. So if you go to the browser now and refresh, voila, here's our table. So for the serial number we have XN. So for the table name, you see the name and the table head and the table data correspond with each other. And if you notice, the table head is on bold. That's how the browser specified that it is the table head by default. It is bold. So that's for table for you. So like we said before, you can still add styles to table. So like the style, let's just add a little bit of styling. We're not going to GSS yet, but let's just add a little bit of styling so I'll know what we're doing. So let's put style attributes. This style attribute is used to specify CSS style that you want that element to have. So we want this table element now to have some style. So let's just specify some style attribute. Let's say border 2 pixel solid solid gray. Gray is a color. So 2 pixel solid, let's use blue. And I know everybody knows the color blue. So it's 2 pixel solid blue. If you go to your browser now, it will show voila. You just type that table to have color. So let me copy this cost this one and put it to the table data. So put into the table head. Voila, we have our table head as blue. So I can remove this one if I don't want to. Yes. So that's it. So we have our table head and the table data. So I can do the same thing. Let's just copy and paste this star into the star is CSS star. Just copy it and paste it into the table data. Let's say light green. Light green. So let's copy the one of this. Let's copy this light green and paste it and save it. Voila. So you see our table is there. So if you want to fill more information, you can just fill more information. You can just duplicate this table row for the table data. The table row for the table data. You can just duplicate it and save to say Benjamin. Staying far away from me. Let's say number 10. Walmart. Walmart. Walmart Street. Then for his phone number, I can just say 902902 710 3050. So, so that's his WhatsApp number. This is my colleague. So you can still WhatsApp him the poetry. So that's it. Save it. So we have one Benjamin, say two Benjamin 100 Walmart Street. That's how to the table. So that's all. So you can play around with HTML because I feel for now you just have to practice more. Next we'll be talking about CSS. What we did here by writing style, border, radius, all of those things are CSS. So we are not into CSS fully, but in the meantime, I want to go into CSS now so that all the attributes, the table we are using, can be styling them. So in our next class, we'll talk about CSS. So and how to use CSS to style your HTML attributes. So you can play with all the HTML attributes, the default and the ones you can just play around with them. Thank you. Stay in the same line until they exhaust the whole width of the screen. And example of that inline element is span, SPAN. Just type of span, click on tab, it will show both the closing and opening tab. So you say, let's say you write a span, say